So, hello and welcome back to Painkiller Redemption. Level 3 is Refinery. Our card status is locked. Our card condition, finish it using only the Razor Cube melee weapon and the shotgun. I'm not going to do that because shotgun ammo is pretty scarce and it's really kind of not fun to have to use kind of sucky weapons, particularly for a couple of sections in this level. And also, you may or may not have noticed, there aren't, well, half the secrets in the level are in this very first area before you even meet an enemy. Which, I think they were just sort of, we need secrets for some reason. They had no problem in only putting one in the previous level, but for some reason, there had to be two obvious ones right here. So our first enemies are the fishbowl blood robot things, which they seem to have a bit of a problem with dying from one shotgun blast sometimes, which makes it a little awkward, but there we go. Again, I'm not sure I can actually fault the developers on individual enemies because they didn't make any of them, but I can fault them on their choice, which I will be doing even more later on. One of the better things about this level is that they do have a reasonable variety of enemies, unlike the last one. This is a much better level, it's much shorter, still not brilliant, and it's not like the developers Eggtooth put a lot of work into it, but it's a little less horrible to play. That said, they are still doing the thing where they just spawn a load of people into a small room and they just kite them in circles for a few minutes. Now, this probably, I would say that a significant portion of the shotgun ammo is in this first area. You'd pretty much never need all of it, unless you were really bad. But then later on in the level, particularly without the double ammo thing, you would be having a lot of trouble finding it. I mean, you would have to, if you were going for the card, stick to the stupid Razor Cube thing. So yeah, hitting those guys with a shotgun is not particularly easy, considering the spread of the shotgun. So you can stand underneath them and make them walk off, or you're stuck using the laser thing on the Razor Cube, which is also not very easy to use. So yeah, here you can see having a little bit of trouble killing them with the shotgun. There, I was just wondering whether, like the fire, the electricity there would hurt you. It doesn't. Again, not really the fault of the developers, but I can chalk it down to the game and the level not being particularly brilliant. Here, you'll see me trying to shoot these guys in the head several times, because they have, well, you may have noticed it, the death animation where they wanted to, well, their head explodes and improbable amounts of blood just spurt out for quite a while. And I keep trying to capture that, and it was a little easier than I had in other runs through this level in this one, but I will show it off in its ridiculousness a bit later. Yeah, another unbreakable box. If you've seen the previous video, you'll know that that hides a bouncy pad, which is the way forward. There we go. I'm not entirely sure where all that is, because looking in their heads, there's certainly nowhere near that much blood. So yes, these enemies are pretty much identical. I believe they are straight reskins, probably from Overkill or something. I don't actually remember where they're from. But yeah, for some reason I guess it does make them a little more interesting, even though they are actually functionally the same. It is, yeah, more interesting than previous level. And we also have these floating purple flying saucer dudes. They do some weird things we'll see a little later, I think. But for now, they're normal enemies, really. They're kind of slightly awkward to shoot because they're flying, and thus you sometimes have to sort of point up a bit, particularly when they're in your face. And it does make it kind of a bit difficult to try and jump out of a group if you do get surrounded. That certainly made that a lot quicker. Being able to click a couple of times and all of a sudden they're all dead. I was quite thankful for that at that point, because it was speeding everything up slightly. So, unlike the stake gun, which we saw in the previous level, that comes from the original game, the dart gun here is quite good, in fact. It doesn't have the same drop-off, so it's much more useful for sniping quickly and easily, and it fires a lot more grenades, which is quite nice, I think. And what's more, it still has the interesting pinning people to walls thing it does. It's not quite as reliable for that, but it does stick people down. It's nice. So yeah, you've probably noticed by now that these flamethrower guys, having to shoot them in the gun, because they do not in fact explode if you don't hit them in the gun. I'm not even sure it's possible to kill them if you're not actually shooting at the gun. But they do die quite nicely. Sadly, I think the splash damage does hurt you, but I'm not sure it hits the rest of them. Certainly you can fire several shotgun rounds into them, and even when a big group of them has 2 or 3 dead, the rest is still fine, so don't know. That section was almost short, which is nice. Now there is a secret round here. I thought that damage was me picking it up for a second, but then I realised I hadn't got the secret discovered. And yeah, that tiny little red glow you saw coming out of the water there was the almost entirely hidden 100 health pickup, which the first time I got it I didn't even realise, because it was kind of hidden. I went round there and looked and didn't see anything, and at that point I was being chased. I deliberately waited so I wouldn't have to fight my way back through the death water, but the first time I literally did not realise I'd picked anything up. I was a little confused. Luckily we've now been locked in a small room with spawning several people, and they're nice enough to do it at both ends, which is neat. And this is where I get a little confused about the flamethrower guys. You may notice they are not doing an awful lot of damage to me. Well, they did just then. Embarrassing as I said that, but yeah, here, I'm literally just sitting here, being flamethrowed, and they're not hurting me. I was on about 118 health for a long time. And so in a second I think I test, just stand there and see if they hurt. Not that I'm hitting that guy or anything. Then moving on, we jump over the top. It's possible to fall off that and have to go all around again. Just a little cut there while I avoid myself dying stupidly. And yeah, remember last time? Almost exact same shape of room in the first level. Don't worry, this time it's a little more interesting because they're spawning these pretty much impossible to dodge enemies all over this room. So rest assured you won't just be sitting there shooting them one by one as they spawn. They will get to you. This room. I think I had 2 or 3 deaths in actual fact, which brings me on to an interesting thing. That load you saw at the beginning of the previous area, for some reason, when I tried to load last checkpoint after dying in here, it loaded me back there twice. So I have found out in a different run that you have to, for some reason, manually load if you want to get that bit. But there we go. Yeah, this section is a lot of fun. There's enemies who aren't at all bothered by death water, who can just crowd all around you until you get stuck on that little outcrop, and then you won't be able to get back. Well, they'll just be able to sort of float over it, sit in it, or whatever. And it also, because it's somewhere you can't go, you tend not to look, like the water previous level, where the soldier guys got stuck. I got my demon morph there, and then it took me a second to realise the last guy was in the water. I was thinking, oh no, I've wasted it because they're just not going to spawn anything in for 20 seconds. Which is something they like to do. So yeah, those guys sit there for a second blowing up, which does waste a little time. I've pretty much learned that by now, but on the first couple of runs through this level, I did not know that and ended up wasting quite a lot of ammo. And there we go again, the exploding head, needlessly spurting a lot of blood. Now you may also be noticing that in the death water, when we kill something, the souls are there, which means we can't get them, and even more so than the soldiers, things in here really like to get in the death water. And this section, the reason I died a lot is because, well, this narrow spit here, where they can use the entire room. I'm restricted to this sort of narrow section, or that little enclosed area around the corner, which is frankly possibly even worse for not dying in. Which, well, I pretty much every time, if I don't clear something out all from one place, I am going to die when I try and get past. So yeah, those guys managed to survive a rocket. They seem to have slightly weird hitboxes or something. Or possibly some directional armor thing I'm not noticing. But yeah, you can see that I'm hitting these guys with rockets, and they're not always dying because I'm not getting the guns. Which, it would be okay if there were 2 or 3 of them, like when they appeared in the original Painkiller, but in this one there are 7 or 8. And yay, another small section. Slightly larger, we do in fact get to use the entire room, just like the enemy, but there's still the only real place to retreat, because they do spawn them a lot of dudes, all in this small area. The only real place to retreat is that entire well, I say entire, the tiny, should I say, closed off area in here, where if you don't have some way of clearing them all out, they flood around the corner, they're just going to corner you. And again, another of the many things in this level which have led to me dying. They spawned an awful lot of these guys, all even quicker than I think pretty much any other point in the game there. Which is kind of them, because it meant I got to kill them all at once, I suppose. But again, like the rest of this game, a little more care and attention would have gone a long way to making it a little more playable. And here we are, I'm getting myself cornered. I was quite lucky they all chose to approach from one side so I could escape around the edge, but pretty narrow and I got hit a couple of times, as you saw. On a high difficulty, those hits would have been harder, I probably would have had less health. And that might have been my death, but as it wasn't. And now, for some reason, they've gone from having many places in this room they spawn, just having one place, and then having a big gap. And this level doesn't really have a theme in terms of its enemies, like the previous one had. They've got the flying things, these squid monsters, who move incredibly slowly and are basically non-threatening because they like to stick in large groups, and you can easily get past them. They're only really a problem in smaller areas, which they did in fact have in the original game, because these enemies fit the smaller areas. Whereas here they've just kind of lumped them in here where they're basically non-threatening. The only problem you might have is accidentally jumping into them while fleeing from the faster enemies. Or I guess they happen to spawn behind you like that guy did, immediately when I wasn't expecting it. And these enemies have a similar sort of green goo flamethrower thing to what I have on the weapon. I think I literally do not use a single time in this video, because it's terrible, the final radiation weapon thing. And it makes them kind of a pain to get past in the enclosed narrow areas. So they're not fun, and what's more, like most of the rest of the enemies here in this level, they have the issue with not dying when they should. I think that seems to be kind of a theme to this level. Things sort of not quite dying when you hit them with a rocket, like the blood bowl things, or the those guys, or there was another one earlier, oh yeah, the flying guys. And this level's just generally not particularly friendly, because you're never entirely sure if things are dying. And again, we'll move on to another small corridor, fairly narrow, where they like to spawn people at both ends at the same time. And what's more, they're ranged enemies. I think these guys are hit scan, which is even worse, somehow. And yeah, yet another stupid section, at least it's short though. And we'll get into the room, which I don't know whether it is the longest room in the game, but it certainly feels like that. When playing through this, it goes on, not least for something we'll see about halfway through it, which is frankly incredibly horrible. And again, I would not want to be using the shotgun to have to snipe these guys up above. And I'm not even sure you could lure these guys down, because the edge, it's not actually something you can stand underneath. I mean, I guess they would fall off. He's waving to me there. I'm very thankful for my one-hit kill ranged weapon. And they know this section is long and annoying, so they've been kind enough to provide us with a big health pickup. Not that it really matters, because the moment you get jammed on one side of that, if enemies are on the other, you're going to get caught in that archway there, and lose almost half of what you got there, or at least a third of it. As I just did. I was not very happy about that, I have to say. Deeply, deeply frustrating. Yet again, sort of trying to get through to escape, but oh no, there are things coming through, because they've spawned them on basically everywhere in this level, so there's nowhere to run. Game about kiting groups of enemies, interesting spawns. No, not doing that, just putting them everywhere. And again, they're dropping them from the roof instead of having them run off a ledge or something. Which, is practically lazy at this stage, I think. Just, oh no, we can't even put them, spawn them on the ground or something. Let's just pretend they're falling from the sky, when they are incredibly obviously, in fact, well, I say pretend they're falling from the sky, pretend they are coming from above. When in fact, rather than actually being from above, they're just gonna spawn them 20 feet up in the air, where they think we won't notice. I'm not entirely sure. I can only guess they were aiming to deceive us into thinking slightly more interesting, have them coming from new places. But from my perspective, it just looks a little lazy, particularly when it's not even like they don't have places to spawn them out of sight or anything. Almost entirely inexplicable, really, why they did that. Yeah. These guys are, I think part of the problem with these guys is they're kind of thin, so it's quite easy to miss them. If you hit the floor, see, I'm kind of having a little trouble having them die there. Even though they appear to be dying pretty quickly from the machine gun. They obviously don't have an awful lot of health. They just seem to not die. And again, I'm pretty much trapped on one side of this room. Invisible box. I think it appears my bullets are actually bouncing off it, which I hadn't noticed before. But there we go. Again, perhaps having some perhaps slightly more creative way of blocking it off or something, I don't know. Just putting something which looks like it should be breakable, but actually you just get stuck on like that and end up getting caught instead of being able to run away. And we are finally done with this section. You may have noticed there are an awful lot of health pickups. Oh no, wait, that was a fake checkpoint. They're gonna make us do a whole load more. But at least like the other fake checkpoint, it's only one wave after it, so not too bad if you are starving of health. Not ideal and not a very nice trick, but not ultimately going to kill you. Probably, maybe. Oh, when I said they were only spawning one wave, I was actually lying. They do several things here. Yeah, it is a bit mean, I think, really. Would certainly annoy me if it were to kill me. Because it's not the first time they've used the gimmick or something. Though I guess by using it several times they do establish for us that it's not in fact a bug or something. It is intentionally fucking with us. Yeah, that's, I think, the only problem with this weapon. You can see I'm starting to use it an awful lot now, and that will continue. The only problem is that you may have noticed that the normal fire uses 3 darts, as, to be fair, the graphic does, but it does mean that you can, well, less so with the normal fire. I think it might actually be impossible, but certainly with the alternate fire, it is very possible to only have 4 grenades left or something, and not be able to use it at all, which isn't very nice when you're kind of panicking a little, trapped, trying to fire off a whole load of grenades to clear a group, clear a path, so you can head through one of the many narrow spaces they like to catch you in. And you're trying to escape, and oh no, you're clicking, but you've got ammo. Why is it not working? And yeah, another new enemy they've chosen to introduce 6 minutes from the end of the level. The weird eye stalks with their guns. They are also a pain to hit, naturally, because they're small and thin. See, taking me several shots to get that one. I do get a little better at it. And for some I don't know whether it was just luck or whether they were actually easier to hit when you're turning them to stone, but certainly seem to be able to hit them more easily with the secondary fire. Which I guess is a godsend, really, if you're trying to avoid them by not running up close to them and you're trying to get the card condition. Having some reasonable way of killing them without getting really close to them, so you can't miss, is nice. Again, spawning a large group, just to kind of all run it off. Not very interesting, but they have been nice enough to at least not make it all one enemy. They've given us the flamethrower guys who need to be hitting a particular spot, and the purple guys who don't. All around makes it slightly more interesting, if a little more hectic and not so easy. Yeah, the fake checkpoint was a while ago, actually, you know. For some, were you hoping for the heal and save point, if you were playing on trauma difficulty or something, or even nightmare, and were desperately hoping for some health or save or something, you would not have it, and you'd have to go through all of that. So, moving on into the next area. Bit of a waste of ammo, really, but hey, I've got enough, I think. Just me checking how many secrets there are, because I'm thinking I should have seen another one by now, I'd have thought, and I probably have missed one. I do miss one in the end, so it may be somewhere in the middle. But I thought I was looking pretty reasonably. Maybe I just didn't notice it in a corner somewhere, being incredibly obvious right in front of my nose. But I was a little confused, thinking there are still 2 more of these to go or something. Or maybe 1 more. Where is it? Well, I don't think it's big spoilers to say this is the last room of the level, and I was kind of thinking it should have been there. Yeah, those guys, they will be already dead, because nothing else you do will affect how quickly they die or anything. But they do still show up as enemies on the radar thing, well, not radar, detector arrow at the top there. They do show up on that, and they will delay the spawning of the next group. So, it's not always obvious they're about to blow up, so you can be sort of pouring more ammo into them. It's a bit of a waste. that is that. The end of our levels down there. So just have a look around, see if I can see the secret. No, and jump in. And I have no idea why the counter and stuff is all of a sudden not counting up smoothly. But there it is. More story now. And in true fanfiction style, they've randomly just taken an enemy from, well, not enemy, sorry, another character from one of the other games, Bill. They just kind of roped him into their poorly written story, so-called. I barely call it a story, I think. There we go. And that's that. I will see you next level. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.